Danny. Right there is
Nope.
where I'm putting it. Right there.
All right. July 4th, Independence Day, Part 1. The sickle bar added a not unpleasant shimmying motion to the steady drumming of the tractor as John guided it across a pasture-turned hayfield, cutting a 6-foot swath through the dense forage. Behind him, the girls followed with pitchforks, spreading out any clumps in the mown grass so they would dry quickly and evenly. The sun shone warmly upon them, but not so warm as in summers past. High temperatures were still only reaching the 90-degree mark. The weather reports gave only small probabilities for rain for the next 4 days, so the Horn family was following the age-old dictum of making hay while the sun shines. Very wise thing to do. Doing it when it's raining is not productive. They'd be stopping for a big 4th of July dinner at noon. It was to be a community affair, and Ellie, Heather, Ann, Lisa, and several other local women were up to the house putting the meal together. The men would come in at noon to eat and then go back to their respective work, at least those who were making their living from the land would. The kids old enough to work would do the same. That evening at dark, they'd all gather together again for the fireworks. The entire community had contributed what they could towards the purchase of the skyrockets and sparklers. Such things were entirely imported so far as he could tell, and the vast majority came from China, so that in these post-impact times they had become quite expensive. Still, they'd managed to acquire sufficient of them to impress the kids. John was looking forward to the lemonade, homemade ice cream, and cake they'd be sharing. The lemons had been expensive as well, imported from Mexico. As he guided the tractor, slowly cutting its way through the grass, he wondered what could be done to lessen their reliance on imported goods to celebrate this most quintessential of American holidays. He briefly considered making his own fireworks, but soon discarded the idea. He still had a small scar on his left hand from an adolescent experiment in pyrotechnic chemistry gone wrong, and was concerned that if he dabbled in it again, it might lead one of the kids to try their own hand at the craft. He reached the edge of the field, so he slowly guided the tractor into its turn, and could now see the girls walking along behind, spreading the cut grass. Behind them, he could see a flock of cattle. Cattle egrets, okay. Okay. And the farm chicken flock working the cut forage for insects. Occasionally, a rooster would chase off an egret for trespassing upon their prerogative. The wind brought the sharp, sweet smell of the cut grass to him, and he realized he was smiling. He laughed and asked himself out loud, well, why not? We're all eating, no one's sick, we're putting food and feed up for the winter, we're not having to fight anyone, and by God, it's the 4th of July and we're still independent. I reckon a man's got a right to smile if he pleases. After a time, he reached the end of the field and guided the tractor into another turn. The girls were reaching the end of the last swath and making the turn into the row he'd just left. He watched them for a time, working steadily, talking and laughing amongst themselves. Being the tallest of the three, he hoped that next year Brittany would achieve sufficient height, that she could drive the tractor for the cutting. The fields were smooth and regular, so there was little more needing to be done in the actual cutting, but to guide the bar and once in a while make a small adjustment to the speed when the density of the grass changed. He'd had her try it this year, but her legs were still somewhat too short to comfortably work the clutch and wheel brakes while staying in the seat. Tomorrow he'd have Ann on the tractor so that he could be doing other necessary work. He looked across the fields, and in the haze of the distance he could see Ed Strickland cutting his own fields, white egrets following him like drifting confetti. He and Ed had come up to a cooperative arrangement in that Ed would bale John's hay in return for John and the girls helping him get his in as well. When John had finished cutting his own, he'd start on the remaining uncut acreage that belonged to Ed. It was a good arrangement since Ed had far more hay than he could put up by himself, and John didn't have a baler. In this way, John would not have to pay someone to bale his hay, and Ed wouldn't have to pay to hired help. John would probably swap Ed for some of his hay in addition if his own cuttings didn't produce enough. In the pre-impact times, John had never put up his own hay, but now things had changed. Between his own pasture and that which he rented from Ed, he now had enough to keep his stock on grass and to cut some for hay too. The less feed he had to buy, the more of their own hard-won earnings the family would be able to keep for itself. The tractor made its slow way down the length of the field, and he turned again, the inside square of the uncut grass becoming steadily smaller. From this direction, John could see his wheat waving in the breeze, turning from green to gold. Adam Kincaid had told him the weekend before that he figured it would be ready for harvest by next weekend and would arrange for the university combine to come out. Nicholas Smith, the faculty member he assisted for, had been in poor health since the impact and had seldom been able to come out into the test fields. But Adam had become a regular along with Mitchell Martin, the forage specialist for the agricultural college. John hoped Dr. Smith would be interested in growing more for his research projects this coming winter, since the university provided his seed and harvesting equipment. Otherwise, he'd have to try to find someone to combine the grain for him or simply cut it for hay. It was half done when he heard the farm bell in the distance, so he looked at his wristwatch for the time. "Glad to hear it," he said out loud. He stopped the forward motion of the tractor, backed up a few feet, then raised the mower bar so no one would walk into it by accident, and shut off the tractor motor. Standing, he made a long, pleasurable stretch, then climbed down from the machine to join the girls heading towards the house. "I don't know about you guys, but I could do with about a half-gallon of cold water. How's everybody's feet holding out?" "I'm all right, Daddy, but I think my boots are starting to get a bit small," Melinda said. "It'll be nice to sit for a while, though." "I'm beat," Cindy added. "Do you all do this every summer?" "No," her uncle replied. "This is the first time, in fact. You're helping create a new family tradition." The girls smiled wearily but said nothing more. "I think my sneaker is starting to come apart, Uncle John. Feels like the heel is loose," Brittany said, wiggling her right foot from side to side. John smiled, then patiently spoke. "Well, we'll get used to it. It's only for a couple days, and we won't do this again for another 3, maybe 4 weeks or so if we get some regular rain. I reckon we better be looking into your shoe situations shortly, though. You're all growing, so it's only natural that you'd be needing new shoes before long." All right. Good night.